welcome to another episode of Power Move Makers. This series was created with a simple goal in mind: to bring forth high-level executives, successful entrepreneurs, and just all-around inspiring human beings. Not just highlighting their successes, but more important, focusing on the road they travel to get there. Now, this week's guest, I'm going to get off cue for a second because I believe in giving people flowers while they are here. This is a man who has motivated me to get into this space. He is a guy who I truly, from my heart, believes has a gift of words, a gift of inspiring and motivating people, and just a gift of bringing light into this world. He is an author, a world-renowned speaker, entrepreneur. Please welcome Mr. Inky Johnson to the Power Move Maker series.
My God, thank you so much, man. It's an honor, man. I appreciate your platform and thanks for the opportunity.
Ink, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Like I was telling you offline, when you agreed to do the interview, it's very rare because my entire career I have been around so-called celebrities and very important people. I've sat in rooms, befriended, but it's very rare that I'm nervous before any interview, but I ain't up the night before thinking about it. So I'm like, I got to get this one right.
No doubt.
So that's the impact you're having out here, brother.
Thank you, man. That's humbling, man. I appreciate that.
Okay, I want to start this interview off a little different because I know this is something near and dear to your heart. So please bear with me. I don't know it by heart the way you do, but I want to read something, okay?
Okay, cool.
Okay, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Absolutely. Why does that verse mean so much to you?
Man, that's my life verse. You know, with the journey I've traveled, with the experiences I've had in my life, my upbringing, the situation I was born into, I've clung on to that verse because of the things I've went through. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. And so for me, it was confirmation that no matter what you go through, no matter what you experience, no matter what you encounter, God still has a plan for your life. And as I've encountered some adversity and opposition along the way in my life, that verse has kind of shaped my perspective and how I viewed things that I've encountered.
Now, were you always a spiritual guy? Were you brought up in the church? I know just in doing my research and having followed you for so long, I know your grandmother was very spiritual. Is this something that has always been part of who you are?
Yeah, so I wasn't always just a spiritual dude. My grandmother was, my mother was, and they would take me to church. Like any other young cat, being there messing around, playing, sitting on the back pew with my cousin. And it wasn't until I got to college in my freshman year and I came in contact with our chaplain. And he told me he wanted to disciple me and walk with me spiritually. And I asked him, could I bring some of my buddies with me because I wanted a level of accountability. And doing that walk, man, it kind of just shaped and molded me and it gave me structure and direction. And it challenged me, you know, and I'm a guy that I like to be challenged, right? Because I believe when I'm being challenged, that brings the best out of me. And so it wasn't until my freshman year of college to where I would say I really deep dive and got serious about my spiritual walk.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. I want to go backwards and then I'm going to bring it up to your college era.
Okay.
Talk to me. You often say how you born in Atlanta. Your mom was 16, if I have that correct?
Yeah, she got pregnant at 15, had me at 16. Yeah.
Wow. What was your upbringing like?
So I was born right downtown Atlanta, Grady Hospital. I was taken to the southeast corner of Atlanta, to Kirkwood, 2-bedroom home, 14 people. And my mother, she had me at 16. It was a lot of us in the house, you know, in that 2-bedroom with 14 people. It's uncles, it's cousins, it's aunties. And I was sleeping on the floor. You know, my whole childhood, I slept on pallets, me and my cousins. And so for me, I loved it, you know, to be honest, but I knew what we were up against, right? Because the blessing was I would get exposed to different things through sports. And so even though I was sleeping on the floor, when I would get with my coaches sometimes and I might go to their house and they kid might have a bedroom or something like that, I was able to see it. I would get exposure to certain environments, right, to how people were supposed to be living.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that my people was bad. We was just caught in the struggle of coming up in inner city. And I loved it. I experienced certain things, but I knew when I grew up, I wanted to have a different life. And I felt as if sports was a vehicle that I could give my family a different way of life.
Now, were you always into sports?
Yeah, I loved it, man, from the very beginning. And my mother put me in it because in my environment, you know, we had it all, man. We had drugs, we had gangs, we had violence, and my mother was working a double shift. And so she didn't want me just coming back home to that environment and just chilling in the neighborhood and trying to find something to do. And so every chance she got, you know, she was trying to send me off to a tournament or put me in some sort of sports to just keep me busy while she was at work.
Now, there's this life-changing event that you often speak about, and I really want you to deep dive into that moment. You talk about you and your cousins, you're outside, you're playing. Anybody who's from the hood, we get it. We didn't have like these fields and you know, these courts and grass and all of that kind of stuff. So y'all out there doing what everybody in the hood was doing, playing football in the street.
Absolutely.
You have a life-changing moment when just some random truck comes down that street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So we used to come home sometimes and we would play football in the street and be getting after it, man, light pole to light pole. And when the street lights would come on, you know, that was our cue. We had to go in the house. And so it was getting dark and I had the ball. My 3 younger cousins in the street, and this blue pickup truck was coming down the street. And so I stood on one side of the sidewalk. My 3 younger cousins stood on the opposite side. And I was kind of waving the truck by, you know, because I knew it was getting to be that time. So I'm like, man, come on, man. And he was driving slow. And when he passed us, you know, we could see it was a white guy, you know, and at the time, well, no white guys in our neighborhood. And so when he got out of his truck, my uncles, they take off running. They think he's the police. Come up between our game, and he was like, man, would y'all want to play football on grass? And I was like, man, I would love that, man. This street getting rough. He's like, go in the house, get your parents, get your guardian, let me talk to him. And my mother was at work and my uncle was in the house. And I went in the house, got one of my uncles, came out, said, man, you would talk to this guy? He said, sure. And he extended his hand. He said, my name is Trey Hurst. He said, I'm going to be honest with you. I just dropped the kid home a couple blocks over. And I was just leaving the neighborhood. He said, I see these little knuckleheads playing tackle football in the street. He said, I run a program across town. He said, if y'all sign them up, bring them out, be a great opportunity for them and it can help them. And my uncle was like, man, I greatly appreciate it, but we just don't have the money for anything like that at this moment. And he said, Ink mother, she's a single mother. She works a double shift. And he said, the other 3, their fathers are in and out of prison. And the coach is like, no problem. He said, you bring them to the park tomorrow, I'll sign them up. I'll pay for it with my own money. And we got to that park the next day, and my man wasn't just paying for me and my 3 younger cousins. He was paying for kids all across Atlanta. Wow. And I wanted to understand just the spirit, you know, to make somebody do that. Like he had his own company, like he didn't have to do that. And I just asked him one day, man, you know, after we got cool, I was like, man, why do you live life the way you live it? And he was like, as long as you live your life and make sure that somebody else's life is okay, he said, son, God will always make sure that your life is okay. And me and my 3 younger cousins in that street that he signed up to play ball was the only people in our family that ended up going to college. He broke a generational curse in our family.
Wow.
That's my man. That's my guy.
Is he still alive to this day?
Absolutely. I still talk to him. That's my guy. To this day.
So he knows what you've become.
Absolutely.
That's such a blessing, brother. That is such a blessing.
Yes, sir.
Can you take me back to that moment? How old are you around this time?
I was 8, probably. Yeah, 8, 9. Yep.
At 8, 9 years old, you had the presence of mind to ask this man, why do you live life the way that you live it?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So because I wasn't seeing it, Shawn. You know, like when you don't see a behavior that's normal, it's intriguing to you. And so where I was, it was just cats hustling, cats trying to take, cats robbing, you know, the whole inner city, cats trying to finesse, you know, cats trying to get over. And when you see somebody doing something for you and don't really ask for anything in return outside of, man, just go to school, do good. You know, my man bought me and my cousins our first steak. You know, like when
Wow.
this behavior is happening to you early, you're kind of intrigued, like, man, what's up with my man? You know what I'm saying? And then you see how he treats other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, nah, that's who he is, right? And I want to understand, why is he doing it? Because I didn't have my father in the household. And so I always tell kids, like, I used to go to sleep just with so many questions, right, that I wanted answered as a young male, right? And most of the time, my coach was that guy that I would put those questions on, or one of my uncles.
Wow. Wow. Leads me to a couple of other questions. Was this your first time playing organized ball?
Absolutely. It's my first
Very
time
first
playing
time.
organized ball. Absolutely.
Your dad, you said he wasn't in the household at this time. Did you have a relationship with him though?
Not early, right? It was real touch and go because, you know, when my mother had me, my father wasn't present.
Okay.
And so it was that whole rift of, my mother despised my father for a long time. And so I don't really know if the relationship wasn't present because him and her, and she just wasn't feeling him. But at the time he wasn't around. It was real touch and go. Like I'll see him sometimes at a sporting event, he'll come out, see me, but my mother didn't really want him around like that. And so I would rarely see him early on. But as I got older and kept going throughout sports, our relationship got a lot better.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, obviously, you excelled.
Mm-hmm.
Go to high school.
Yeah.
Most schools in the inner city, they don't have the best sports programs.
Yep.
Was your school any exception to that rule, meaning your high school at the time?
No, we weren't an exception to that rule. I attended Crim High School. It's an Atlanta public school system. Dropout rate was higher than the graduation rate.
Wow.
And, you know, the sports, man, you know, you got cats that were dealing with real issues. And so, like, I used to fight with some of my teammates. And now that I think about it, because I was passionate and I saw talent and potential in these cats, and I wanted them to try to go to college or, you know, try to get their education paid for. And we would be at the lunch table and cats would be talking about real issues, right? You had some of my teammates, their mom was on crack, you know, selling their stuff. You know, you had cats worrying about, I got to stay at home. I got to take care of my little brothers and sisters. You had some of my classmates, you know, coming to school and their parents then got murdered in the same streets that we walked to school on.
Wow.
You know, my wife, you know, she lost both of her parents, right? At the young age of like 7. You know what I'm saying? So we dealing with all this as kids. And at my high school, I was passionate. I wanted to change that because when our high school was mentioned in the city of Atlanta, you would say Crim, cats would say, oh, you go to Crime High. They didn't even call my school Crim High School. They'd be like, you go to Crime High. And then my mother attended the school before me. And when she attended her generation, they called it Murphy High School, but they called it Murder High in Atlanta. And so it had a reputation that I was passionate about changing and I was serious about it.
You know, it's so, you know, I'm so fascinated by your story because most young people are not thinking this in depth. So your level of insight at such a young age is so intriguing to me. Now, is this the high school you graduated that you ultimately got your scholarship to go to college, or did you switch schools?
Yeah, this is the high school that ultimately I graduated and got my scholarship. But my mother and father transferred me my sophomore year because they felt as if, you know, people weren't going to college from Crim. And they felt they had a kid with some talent and they didn't want him to get caught up in the cycle of just going to a school, playing ball and not getting an opportunity. And so I begged and pleaded for them not to send me to this high school called Tucker, great school. And they sent me to it because my coach, the first guy that signed me up, you know, he took me to Tucker Rec. And so I played with him from the time I was a kid until I was a freshman in high school. And when I got to be a freshman in high school, I played for the high school. But he knew the coaches at the high school. They had a relationship with the University of Georgia. So he was telling my mom, like, man, you don't need to have Ink there if he's not going to get an opportunity. We can take him here. He can get out. Everybody's intention was right. But I felt as if I would have went to that school and went to college, my peers, my family members, they probably wouldn't have had that same opportunity. And so when they transferred me, I'm going to be real, I didn't go to class, right? I would sit in front of the school. No, I didn't go to class when they transferred me. I would sit in front of the school with the police officer, and my man would be like, man, why don't you just go to class? I was like, it's no disrespect, but I don't want to be here. Because you got to think, I'm in inner city Atlanta, right? Like I'm almost downtown Atlanta.
So I got to believe you ain't in Buckhead. You not in Alpharetta.
Nah.
You somewhere where we see the Atlanta child murders going on.
I'm in Atlanta. Like I'm in Zone 6 Atlanta. That Gucci man Future them be rapping about. I'm in that
There
Atlanta.
you go.
And so they would have to get me up, man, like 5 a.m. I would have to get picked up by somebody. I would get dropped off at a restaurant down the street from the school. I would have to sit there until the school open, walk about 3 blocks to the school. It was just a lot. And I was like, bro, I think I can make it from my high school. I said, I'm going to do everything in my power to make it. And my mother just got tired of it. And she was like, I'm going to transfer him back. And when she transferred me back my junior year, I played ball. And my senior year, I got a new coach. That was a blessing, man. And he came in and he was like, what college you want to go to? And he had the same energy I had. And he just so happened to be Jamal Lewis's high school coach that attended Douglas High School across town. And he was like, I got you. And he had the relationship with Tennessee. And he was like, you do what you got to do, and I'm going to fight for you on my end. And I was like, I got you.
How was your grades?
Yeah. It was okay. It was okay because I was like any other young cat, man, thinking I'm a jock and I'm going to just play ball and get to college. And I wasn't aware of the requirements at the time. Like I had most requirements, but I wasn't aware of the clearinghouse. And when my coach came, he introduced me to all that because cats weren't going to college.
Correct.
Guidance counselor weren't going to talk to somebody like, hey, man, you got a shot. Here's what you need to do. Here's your core courses. They weren't worried about it. And when my coach came, he was like, this kid got a shot. And when he looked at my transcripts, he was like, you behind. You got to get this in order, this in order. And he put me in the right position, got things in order to get me in position to go to school.
That's great, man. It seems like God has been putting people in position for you from almost day one. You know, first you have the gentleman who drove through your neighborhood. He pulls you in and takes you under his wing. Now you have a coach that transfers in your senior year, did you say?
Yeah, my senior year, right before the summer before my senior year. Yeah.
And had he not transferred in, there's a good chance that you wouldn't have been prepared to even be considered for a scholarship.
I firmly believe that, man. I firmly believe it. Yeah. That's how I view it, though, Shawn. Like, when I look back over my life, of course, when I was going through it, I didn't look at it that way. But when I look back, like, I always share with people, man, it's like at every phase and stage of my life, it was like the Creator, like, inserted somebody. And I thank God that I listened, you know, and I think because I listened, it made all the difference in my life.
You know, I often speak on this program about trusting the process. You have to trust the process. And, you know, me, like you, I'm a man of faith. And I really believe God has got this thing so divinely worked out. And
Absolutely.
I was thinking, like, how do I attack this interview? And the more I thought about it, that's what kept coming back to me, is you are the living embodiment of just trust the process. Because at every point in your life, God has done something to take you to the next level, even when it looked like you were being pushed backwards. So
Absolutely.
You have such an interesting story. I want to move it forward because this is where your story gets really great. Mm-hmm. You go to Tennessee, correct?
Absolutely.
Are you a starter?
No, not right away.
Okay.
Not right away. I became a starter. Yep.
What was different about Tennessee? What opened your eyes? What opens your mindset to the world at that point that you hadn't seen in Atlanta?
Man, I would say just the level of entrepreneurs, the relationships, and because of where I came up in Atlanta, I just didn't have access at the time. Like now that I live back in Atlanta, I'm introduced to a totally different side of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Now that I went to college, did what I did. But at the time when I was coming up as a kid, because of my circumstances and where I was, I just didn't have access. But once I got to the University of Tennessee, because you're a football player, you get access to certain things that other people probably don't. And so I had relationships with people that I probably wouldn't have had if I was a regular student because of the alumni and the network of being a collegiate football player. And the coach, man, like Coach Philip Fulmer, like the reason I went to Tennessee was because like I'm a loyal guy. Mm-hmm. And my whole life, everybody that ever helped me, I never wanted to let him down. And so in him, I found that again, right? When he recruited me, he said to me, like, I believe in you. When a lot of coaches was like, man, you got some grades that you got to get. Like, I don't know if you might have to go to military school or not, Hargrave, or, you know, you got to go to Georgia Military Academy, spend a year there, then come to school. Coach Fulmer is like, I believe in you. He said, I know you're going to do what you got to do. I know you're going to handle your business. And so I kind of dealt with people based on how they dealt with adversity and opposition. And when I got to Tennessee, I was dealing with a coach that I felt like he handled problems well. And so that was a guy that I can confide in, a guy that I could trust.
Beautiful, beautiful. I got to go backwards a little bit.
Oh, no doubt.
You're growing up in the house, 14 people.
Mm-hmm.
Got to believe you never slept in the bed by yourself.
Nah.
What was that experience like going to college?
Yeah, man.
Probably get that bed to yourself.
Oh, no doubt, man. It was sweet, man. It was sweet because, like, even when I was a kid, like, it was like a rotation that we might get every once in a while to be in the bed, right? And when we got that rotation, it was 6 of us, right? 3 at the foot, 3 at the head. And so most of the time it wasn't even worth it. Like, cats got the foot on your face. Like, it's like, man, whatever. And when I got to college, I'll never forget, man, they had me in a room with my own bed, and it was a king size. And some cats came up and they was like, hey, Ink, we're going to hit the sorority party. And I was like, I'm good, right? And they was like, man, you got to hit the party. And I was like, bro, I got a room with my own bed. I was like, I got a king-size bed, bro. Like, bump that party. And the cats looked at me and they was like, you ain't got a bed at home? I was like, no. It was like, bro, you really don't got a bed? I was like, no, man. I used to sleep on the floor. And I stayed in there, man. I had my own little suite. Like, I was on cloud 9, bro. It meant the world to me. And I got up that next day and cats was tripped out about it. Like, they couldn't believe it.
Nah, people don't understand, like, something as simple as a bed that most people take for granted.
Absolutely.
People living in this world that would get a right arm to just have one good night's sleep. So when I'm listening to your story, it brings me back to, you know, so many people I've grown up with, even my family, just having that bed and what it meant to you. Mm. You get to college. Are you now serious, not just about sports, but about education?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because I was the first one in my family. And so it was almost like the sacrifices my mom made, my grandma, my coaches, like it was like all of them putting me in that position with their investments, and I had to give them a return on that investment. And so I was the first one in my family. And I told my mom and my grandma when I left to go, I said, I'm going to graduate. Like, I'm going to break that generational curse. I'm going to be the first one not only to go, I'm going to finish, right? And we had all the resources possible for us to finish. And so I was serious about not only the game, I was serious about my education as well, because I felt I could do something in my family that hadn't been done.
Beautiful, beautiful. Talk to me. Mm-hmm. We spoke about it earlier. You said in your freshman year, you went and met with the chaplain, and that's where you really was introduced to the Bible and to faith, just real, not introduced to faith, but where it really enhanced in your life. Can you talk to me about that?
Absolutely. And so he asked me, could I meet with him in his office?
Why? Like what was it about you?
Yeah. I was talking trash during the scrimmage, you know? Like, I was talking a lot of trash. Our first scrimmage, I'm talking crazy, right? And after the scrimmage, he was like, man, you wild. Like, you're a wild boy, man. And he was like, come meet me in my office tomorrow. I was like, all right, cool. And I met him, and he was like, I want to disciple you. And I was like, man, what's that? I was like, that sounds hard, man. What's that? He's like, I want to walk with you spiritually. He's like, the same way you're going to study your playbook. He's like, I want to give you assignments to study in the Bible. He's like, if you got 8 o'clock workout, I want to meet with you at 6:30. You know, if you got meetings at 6, I want to meet with you at 5. I was like, cool. Can I go talk to my roommates so I can have some accountability. And he was like, yeah. And I went and talked to him. I was like, hey, man, the chaplain talked to me about discipleship. Would y'all be open to walking with me on this thing? We could just hold each other accountable. And they was like, no doubt. And we went back to him, and like the first meeting, we tested him. You know, he gave us an assignment and we didn't do it. And we showed up to his office and he was like, y'all got it? And we started giving him excuses like, man, we had meetings, we had workouts. He was like, get out. And he's like, man, come on, man. He was like, no, get out. He was like, get out. Y'all don't want to take it serious. Get out. And he said, the next meeting is on such and such, have the work done. And when we came back from that day moving forward, every assignment he ever gave us, man, we took it serious. Every challenge, we took it serious. But he was a real cat. You know, like he wasn't this cat that was like super preachy. He made us understand the journey. He made us understand grace. He made us understand we was going to fall short. He made us understand that it was a lifelong journey, most importantly.
Wow, Ink, you're a freshman at this time. Now, these roommates, did they play football too?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you found 3 other people playing football as freshmen when everybody is running around. It's your first time living on your own. It's nothing but girls on the campus. It's parties, it's drinking, it's this, it's that. And you telling me not just you, but you found 3 other jocks to say, we want to go and learn about the Bible in our freshman year? Yeah,
man. Yeah. Because this is a blessing too. Like, Prez, like all of us came from similar environments, just in different states. And so you had Robert Ayers that was from Jersey City, New Jersey, right? Got kicked out of high school, sent to South Carolina, ended up getting drafted first round, 18 pick to the Broncos. You had Gerard Mayo from Bad News, Virginia. You know what I'm saying? You had Ramon Foster. He was from a farm in Tennessee. But all of us was from the same type of background to where, you know how most cats get to college, that's their first taste of like freedom. And so they wild out and they haven't seen anything. Most of us came from inner city. And so we had saw it all, tasted it all, been a part of it all. And so by the time we got to college, it was like, man, we trying to do what we got to do, graduate and get to the league so we can help our families. And that was a blessing that I got connected with those cats because they was just as serious about it as I was.
How laser focused were you on getting to the league at this point? Because I know you started playing when you were around 7 years old. Yeah. Just for the audience sake who doesn't know your story, what is your mindset like from 7 years old and you're finally in college where you know if I do well, I can actually live my dream?
It was everything, you know, because like, man, when I was a kid, I missed meals. You know what I'm saying? So it was everything to me. Like I wasn't about to play my opportunity away. Like I remember mornings when me and my young cousins would go to breakfast. And like as soon as they would see the cafeteria, they would sprint to the front of the line and the cafeteria administrator would put us on the wall and start yelling at us and be like, hey, Ink, you the oldest. Like, why you let them do this? And I was too embarrassed to tell them like, man, we didn't eat the night before. Like all my little they just hungry, right? We in breakfast, they just trying to rush to the front of the line and get something to eat. You thinking they just trying to break line, but I was too embarrassed to tell him until one morning he put us on the wall. He was like, Ink, you the oldest. Why do you let them do this? And I was like, bro, we didn't eat last night. And he was like, why didn't you say something? And I was like, you never asked. I was like, you just grilled us. You know what I'm saying? Like every morning you just jumped on us. And so when I got to college, like all that was riding on it. Like my mother working a double shift. Like my family in that 2-bedroom home, they were still there. You know what I'm saying? My cousins were still sleeping on the floor when I got to college. And so it meant everything to me. Most cats weren't coming from that. And so for me, man, I thought about every meal I ever missed. And I never wanted to miss another one.
So what type of athlete are you when you get on the field? Because off the field, you're clearly a good person. Like you're a good human being. When you got on that field, did a whole nother alter ego kick in? Did you become somebody else on that field?
Yeah, no, I was passionate, man. I played it the way it's supposed to be played. But I was still a good dude. You know what I'm saying? I talked my trash and handled it, but I was just a competitor. You know how you got these dudes that compete? Like I was the dude that I go up to the line to a receiver and be like, let's get a crowd their money's worth today. Like, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Let's get it in. Like, I ain't doing that and we're going to take a play off. No, we finna get the people what they came to see. I was that dude, right? Because I knew my family was there, your family probably watching, and God done blessed us both with the opportunity. We finna go hard. We gonna talk some trash, and at the end of the game, I'm gonna dap you up and tell you good luck. But I wasn't a dirty player, nothing like that.
What's the feeling like, Ink? Most of us, 90% of us on the planet, we're never going to walk out that tunnel. We're never going to look up and see an arena full of people. Mm-hmm. Person like you coming from Atlanta,
no
coming
doubt.
from the dirty.
No doubt.
You had that opportunity to walk out on that field. Do you remember the first time you ever walked out and it was actually put into the game?
Oh, man, it was amazing, man. Like, because when you come from Atlanta public schools, like, you in Atlanta. It's so much to do in Atlanta. So cats ain't really coming to no football game on a Friday night like that. Like, I probably play, and we weren't good. Like, you get some schools like Doug, and you got Jamal Lewis's, they might pull the crowd. But when I played, might have had like 100 people at the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, right inner city Atlanta, because we weren't doing it like that. So I go from 100 people to 108,000 in the stadium. And so when I go out there, it's like, this how it's supposed to be. Like, this the crowd I'm supposed to be playing in front of. And I was hyped, but more than anything, man, I was just grateful, man. Like, I was grateful I had that opportunity, and I felt as if I did it right, I can get some cats on my high school team an opportunity. Because we had a reputation, right? Like, one of my cats from my high school team, I was like, bro, when I go to college, if I do it right, you're going to get more scholarship offers than me, right? You're going to handle your business. And he did, right? He went to Mississippi State, but he got kicked out, right, from shooting at a cat at a gas station. You understand? So when I went out, it was a different perspective in terms of when I was playing, how I conducted myself, even until this day in my business dealings and how I carry myself.
Wow. Can you talk to me about the day you found out that you was actually going to be a #1 draft pick?
Yeah, man, it was wild, man. I was watching film on the California Bears at the time, and they had Deshaun Jackson, they had Marshawn Lynch, Justin Forsett had a stacked team, and I was just studying them because we was going to kick the season off with him. And
what
my
year
defensive
you
backs coach. I'm going into my junior year.
You're going into your junior year.
Yeah, so it's the summer, right, going into my junior year. And, that would have been my second year starting. And so I'm sitting there, my defensive backs coach comes in, Larry Slade, and he's like, Ink, I got some great news for you. And I dropped the click. I was like, what's up, coach? What you got? And he hands me like a first sheet of paper. He was like, you're on track to graduate in 3 years. I was like, man, that's awesome. Like, that was one of my goals. And he hands me the second sheet, and he was like, you're projected first-round draft pick. You're projected top 30 draft pick. And he said, just do what you've been doing, man. You and your family be well taken care of. And I thanked him, and I ran out of the room, called my mother and grandmother, man, and was like, after this season, like, we'll never struggle again. Like, we'll never miss another meal. Like, I got you.
Wow. So all you had to do is do what you have been doing since 7 years old.
Absolutely.
Go out there and play the game that you love.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
What was your season looking like in your junior year?
Go
ahead.
I started off strong. Started off against Cal. First game, I got a pick. I had several pass breakups. I was nominated for Defensive Player of the Week. And the second game was against Air Force. And I was having a great game, man. Like, locked cats up, made a lot of tackles. In the fourth quarter, with 2 minutes left, that's when the injury happened.
Hold on. Before we get into your injury, were y'all up in the fourth quarter?
We had went up, and then they had the ball, and they were driving to try to win. So we were up, but they had the ball at the end of the game trying to win the game. Yeah.
Okay, so this play that ultimately changes your life, it was a play that needed to happen. It wasn't like you can just cruise and take these last 2 minutes of the game off, correct?
Nah, it needed to happen. Definitely needed to happen. Absolutely.
Do me a favor, paint the picture for us, because this is a life-changing event right here. Second life-changing. You've had many, but I'm going to say the time that the coach drives through your neighborhood, that is the first major life-changing event, and now you have a second one. Paint the picture for us.
Man, it was a little bit over 2 minutes left in the game, and we were confident that we were going to win it, even though they had some momentum, but we had a really good defense. And when we broke the huddle, I was like, man, I hope they throw the ball my way. I can make a tackle, you know what I'm saying? Like, make this cat fumble, and we get ready for Florida. And sure enough, man, we break the huddle, we get in our positions, and the play starts to unfold, and I look at the quarterback, and he's looking my way. And he releases the ball, throw it to a guy, he catches it. I'm like, man, I got exactly what I asked for. And I'm going to make the tackle, and as soon as I hit him, I'm talking about at the point of contact, it seemed as if every breath in my body just left.
Wow.
Like my body went completely limp. I fell to the ground. I blacked out. Had never happened to me before. Been in a lot harder collisions. And as soon as I hit the ground, I woke up. And when I woke up, it was a shock going through my whole body, and I couldn't move. And my teammate, my best friend, Gerard Mayo, runs over. He's like, Ink, get up. Let's rock. And I was like, I can't. He's like, what you mean you can't? And I was like, bro, I can't feel nothing. And then the shock eventually left, but it stayed in my right arm and hand. And they brought the spine board out, and they put me on the spine board, and they were wheeling me off the field to the ambulance.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, man. It was wild.
Wheeling you off the field. At this point, are you thinking to yourself, I just had a life-altering moment? Or are you saying to yourself, I'm going to go to the hospital, shake this off, and I'll be back for the next game?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's just routine. I'll be back. I'm thinking like I got a stinger, a shoulder injury, if at all, at the worst, probably a broken arm. Right? But I'm not thinking like my life is about to be altered. I'm just thinking it's football. Things happen, and so I'll be back. Yeah.
Were you in a lot of pain at that moment?
I was in some.
You was in some pain, but
yeah,
not enough to make you think this is it.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't that type of pain to where I was like, man, it might be over. I was in some, and I was like, man, maybe it's just a stinger or something like that.
Get to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through that moment.
Yeah. When I get there, they do their little procedures, and they run a couple CAT scans, and they put me in a room after they run their test, and I'm in like a waiting room, and the doctor comes in. I'm still in the bed, hospital bed at this moment. And they've taken all my equipment off. And the head doctor, I see him, he's kind of jogging, running into the room. And he's screaming for the other guys. He's like, guys, get in here. Got to rush him back to emergency surgery. He's about to die. And when I heard him say that, I'm like, huh? Like, die? Because you got to think, like, I'm chilling at this point. Like, we went through all the procedures, and nothing has been intense, right? Everything has been cool. Protocol, and he's like, yeah, we got to rush him back to emergency surgery. He's about to die. And so when he gets close to me, I'm like, die? Like, yeah, die. I'm like, die? He's like, yeah. I'm like,
so
what
you
happened?
Can still talk?
Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah, I'm good. I'm sitting there like me and you sitting there, right? I got some pain, but I'm not like out of it. I'm not loopy, none of that. And he was like, we ran a test. We noticed you have ruptured your subclavian artery. You're bleeding internally.
Okay, what for our audience and even for me, what's the subclavian artery?
It's like the main artery in your chest. It's the main artery. And he was like, we got to rush you back and take the main vein out of your left leg and plug it into your chest in order to save your life. He said, or you won't be here in the morning.
So he told you that directly?
That directly. Yeah, that directly.
What's going through your mind at this point?
I'm just like, let's go. Because if my life on the line, I'm like, man, let's go. Like, I want to be. Now, football is not that important. Now, like, I want to live. Like, and I could see, like, he not playing.
So this is where it got real for you. This moment. He said, you will not be here in the moment. All of a sudden, you go from sitting there like, Doc, what are you talking about, to let's do this because my life is on the line.
Absolutely. Yeah,
now,
man.
Are your parents there at this time?
Yeah, yep. They outside. Yep, outside the room.
Okay, do they normally come to your games?
Yeah, they came to him. Yep.
No, I'm saying, do they normally come to your games?
Oh yeah, they came to all my games. Yeah,
Okay.
In college, yeah.
Good.
In college, they always came.
So your parents there, they're getting this same news. Now, all of a sudden, I got to believe your mom, your dad is looking like, what are you talking about, Doc?
Yeah, man. Everybody is kind of like, they couldn't believe it because it shifted so quick. And at that point, like, they didn't know if I was going to live or die. They didn't know if they was going to have to amputate my arm. Like, it was a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because it was a lot of questions, it put my mom and dad in a space to where now they had to be in the same room. Like, my mom and dad couldn't even be around each other. Like, that's how bad the blood was, like, in terms of
even to that moment in time?
Yeah, man. Like, she despised him for a while.
Wow.
That hurt and that pain from when she had a son and he wasn't present and he bounced. Like, she carried that for a long time. And when my injury happened, for the first time, they had to be in a space with no tension because the focus was their son,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this was a serious issue. And, like, my father apologized, you know what I'm saying? Like, he said to my mother, like, I'm sorry. Like, you did a good job raising Ink. And I don't know if his train of thought was, man, I don't know if my son going to surgery, if he's going to make it out. I don't know if he comes out, will he be the same? I don't know what his train of thought was, but I know it made him apologize.
So he apologized literally in the hospital in that moment.
Yep.
And you were there to witness it?
Yep, I saw it.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I saw it, man. And that was the first time I was like, you know, like, God is up to something. Because they don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't rock at all. So I know God is up to something. I don't know what, but I know God is up to something. And when I went, you know, into surgery, man, and I came out, there was 350 staples in my body, and there was more incisions than I thought I would have. Yeah.
How many incisions did you have?
I had 6 down my left thigh, 1 across the left side of my neck, 1 across the right side of my neck, twice through my right ribs, and they cut me from the bottom of my armpit all the way down to the bottom of my hand.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your surgery.
Mm-hmm. And so when they went in to repair the artery, they said they noticed that I had torn some nerves in my brachial plexus. And the brachial plexus were basically the nerve roots that went from the spine that control the shoulder, arm, hands, and fingers. And they said I had torn them at all levels and they couldn't be replugged. And they said I had to do a later surgery at the Mayo Clinic when the swelling and everything went down. And so that's why they had to do so many incisions, because they had to go in and do nerve grafts and reroute some other things.
Gotcha. How long was your surgery? Do you know?
I'm not sure in terms of how many hours it was. Yeah.
Okay, so I got another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you do know the answer to this. How long was it before? Because in this moment, you wake up from your surgery. Mm-hmm. Sure, the doctor at some point breaks the news. You're paralyzed in your right arm and right hand. You'll probably never play football again. And everything that you worked for your entire life, it's gone. Blink of an eye. Tell me about the processing of that, and how long did you go into a depression? How long was it before you had a mind shift and understand that I got to trust this process? God has something greater for me.
Absolutely. So initially, they didn't say like your arm is paralyzed. Like initially, they didn't say that. What they used was they said it's probably over. Your football career is probably over. And because of the brachial plexus injury, like it's such an injury to where nobody can really answer in terms of if anything is going to come back. Like they don't know if your finger flexion is going to come back. They don't know if your arm movement is going to come back. The only thing they knew was your arm probably won't ever be the same again. Mm-hmm. But they didn't know at that moment it would be permanently paralyzed. But what they did say was your football career is probably over. But I didn't believe it. I was like, man, no way. I put in too much work. You know, I was like, man, I never cheated. You know, like I've been working from this from the time I was a kid. Like, I was like, God, like, nah, God won't let me go out like this. Like, surely, like, let me get the contract, take care of my family. Then if something go down, you know, like I done secured my family's future. But I was like, I put in too much work. And so I got out of the hospital, you know, within 3 days. And I wanted to get back to practice, right? They wanted to send me back to Atlanta, unenroll me. And I was like, I'm not going back to Atlanta. I was like, man, can y'all order me a dangerous sling and a Velcro strap? It was like, but Ink, you can't play. I was like, this is not about playing a game. It's like, I just want to go to practice with my teammates because I knew I needed to be back in that environment. I needed to get back in a routine. I need to go back to class. I need to still work out. Because if I go back to Atlanta, they just going to say, Ink, you tried, man. Good job. Now you can sit on the porch with us in the trap. You can just chill, make excuses, and we can say, well, Ink tried. You know, like, nah, I'm going to finish what I started. I'm going to still get my degree. Even though I got to write with my left hand, it's all good. I'm going to figure it out. And so I was out of that hospital in 3 days, man. I was back in class, back at practice, working out with my guys, and I still had staples in my body.
It's amazing. That's amazing. How much rehab did you have after that, after your surgery?
Oh, man, years. Like, even, like, after my first surgery, I was doing rehab, and I had a second surgery in December at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And I had to rehab still after that because the grace period for my injury for anything they said would come back, it was like 2.5 to 3 years. And they said, Ink, if you can give us 2 years of maybe 5, sometimes 7 days a week, and we'll just see what happens. And so I had to go through rehab for 2 years, and nobody knew what the result was going to be. And so that's why I came up with the saying of, can you be committed to the process of what you're doing without being emotionally attached to the results of what you're doing? In other words, if you don't know what the outcome is going to be, if the outcome or the situation changes, can you still show up every single day and give everything you got to a situation when it doesn't turn out the way you want it to be? Because what happened was it changed my whole mentality, man. It changed my whole spirit because I didn't have an answer. Like, Prez, they couldn't tell me, if you come, Ink, your arm is going to work. They'll come one day and have an arm skateboard. They'll come one day and have balloons for me to blow in to try to get, you know, like my ribs right. Like, I'll come one day, they'll have another contraption and be shooting dye in my back and dye down my arm. And so it wasn't an answer. But every single day I had to bring positivity. I had to bring a mentality. I had to bring a spirit to an environment that I wasn't guaranteed anything.
At what point did you in your young mind, you're going through this thing and you're fighting, because I got to believe you want to get back out there. You want to see some change. Even if it's the littlest thing, like my fingers can wiggle.
No question. Yeah.
At what point did the reality set in, this ain't going to happen? Like this, it's done.
Yeah. Probably about 1.5 years later, when I was in one of my rehab sessions for my arm, and I would do this thing to where, like, every day I would jump up off the table and I would always run over to my PT and I would grab him by his shoulder and I would be like, JD, what we got today, man? Like, you seeing anything today? Just joking with him. And on this day, I ran over to him and I grabbed his shoulder and he kind of slid from under me. And he went to kind of walk off, and I jogged over to him and I grabbed his shoulder and slowly turned him around, and he was crying. And like, this is my guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, he talked trash in the rehab session. Like, this is my guy. And he was like, Ink, I'm sorry, man. He's like, we're not seeing a thing, right? And he was like, we want it to work. And I was like, I do too. And he was like, man, I'm sorry. Like, your arm probably would never work again. Your hand probably would never work again. And I was like, physically. And he was like, what do you mean physically? I was like, physically, JD. Like, physically, my right arm and hand is out of commission. I said, but I'm going to use this arm and this hand every day of my life for the rest of my life by the way that I live my life. I said, JD, I never let a situation or circumstance define my life. And he was like, that's right. And at that point, I knew it was going to be one of these things to where I was going to be an example and a reflection of how to handle adversity. It wasn't so much of my arm getting back to the point that I wanted it to be. It was how I used my arm in a situation that I was brought into to affect people's lives and environments that I was blessed to go into.
Now, is this something, because you're still a young man, you got to be 20 years old at this point.
I was 20. Yeah, I was 20 years old.
Is this something that just came to you in that moment, or is it something you learned sitting with the chaplain in discipleship? Is it your dad? Like, where did you, at 20 years old, most people would have been depressed. They would have been angry. They would have been cursing God. They got this close. This close. You can smell the money. Like you are guaranteed first round draft pick.
Absolutely.
What is your reaction in that moment? Are you feeling a depression? Like, how did you get to that point?
It was never depression. It was more so disappointment. And like the thing that helped me, man, was like those people that we talked about being in my life, because all of them are still there. And I'll never forget, I was apologizing one day just to them, and they were all in the room, and I was like, I'm sorry, man. I had tears rolling down my face, and they were like, what are you sorry for, Ink? And I was like, man, I can't make it to the league, and I can't pay you guys back. And my coach, man, like that signed me up when I was a kid. He was like, Ink, you think we did what we did for you so you could make it to the NFL? I was like, yeah, I think that was part of it. He's like, man, bump the NFL. I don't even watch the NFL. He was like, I did what I did for you so you could become a great man one day. He said, the only thing I want from you, man, is for you to pay forward what we did for you in the lives of other people. He said it was never about a sport. He said, I just want you to be a decent man. He said, one day if you're blessed with children, just be a decent father. If you're blessed with a wife, let's be a decent husband. You know, like make your life count. He said, it's not it, man. It's not the end of your life. And my mother, you know, she was like, one bad chapter don't define a book, eh? Like, this is it. Like, this is only a beginning. And I took all those words, man, that positive encouragement, like my father. Like, he was there. You know, he stayed with me for a month, you know, helping me do things, helping me get my clothes.
What you mean he stayed with you for a month? Because you, up until that point, you never lived under the same roof with your dad, correct?
No, man. And for the first time, he was like, I'm going to stay with you for a month just to walk with you, right? Take you to rehab for your arm. I'm going to take you to church. I'm going to take you to discipleship. I'm going to help you get things in order. And that was big for me, right? Because like you said, I never been on the same roof as my father like that. You know, I never stayed with my father under the same roof. And for him to come and stay in our little college house and be there, kick it with me and my boys, but more so for me to get that father and son time, for me to talk to him, you know, bounce things off of him, for him to answer some of those questions. That was big for me. And all of those words and all of those things, it helped me get back on my feet and helped me use my situation to try to go out and be a blessing.
And a blessing you have been. You graduate. What'd you graduate with?
So I graduated with my undergrad in political science and my master's in sports psychology.
Sports psychology. So you come back home, I'm assuming, to Atlanta, start your life.
Yeah, so the plan wasn't to come back. The plan was to stay in Tennessee, man. I planned to coach. You know, I planned on becoming a football coach and started down the path to do it. And when I made the decision to come back to Atlanta, my wife was still here. And she was teaching in Atlanta. And she had got pregnant with our daughter, Jada. And at the time, I talked to Coach, and I was like, you know, I want to go back and be there for my family because I don't want my kids to have to grow up the way I did in terms of me not being there. And he was like, hey, go do it. And I planned on working at the rec center in my neighborhood in Kirkwood. And I was going to work there and create leadership curriculums for the kids. Like, speaking was never even on the radar. Like, I never planned to do this. Like, I called the guy that was over Atlanta Parks and Rec, talked to him. He said, sure, Income, I got you a job. He's like, I'm going to give you $20,000 a year. I was like, bet, let's do it. And when I moved back, I called him and he never answered. I emailed, he never responded. And then I went up there to see some people and they was like, you overqualified. I was like, what's that? Like, I'm just trying to work at the rec center I grew up in. And they was like, we can't do it. And at that point, man, when I moved back to Atlanta, it was a lot of prayer. I was trying to get a job, you know, like I wasn't trying to speak. And I would go out and volunteer. Yeah, I would just go out and volunteer because people would still ask me to come out to talk, you know, about my arm. And I was big on Habitat for Humanity because a lot of people had helped me. And so I would just go out and try to serve. Whenever I would go somewhere, people would just strike up a dialogue because they would see my arm, one arm smaller than the other. They didn't know if it was a prosthetic. Like, people just had a lot of questions. And I would sit there and I would answer them. And people would be like, you need to speak. And I was like, no, I'm cool, man. I ain't trying to speak. Yep. And one day my buddy Gerard Mayo, he's like, Inky, you need to pray about it. And I prayed about it one night, and it was simple, man. Like, my prayer was, Lord, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, this was probably the most confusing time of my life because I had went to college, got close to making it to the NFL, got injured, moved back to Atlanta, 2 blocks I grew up, in my wife's grandmother's home. And I'm like, God, like, I know I didn't go all the way to college to come right back, like 2 blocks away from my spot. And I was like, Lord, I don't know what you want me to do, man, but people are saying speak. And I was like, if it's speak, Lord, like, let's just go. I just want to do something with purpose. And I said, I'll be obedient. And opportunities came.
Speaking is not a career that is like be an accountant or be a lawyer. So when people are telling you you should speak, do you even understand at that point that this is an actual career path?
Nah.
Because I gotta believe as people tell you should speak for a living, I gotta put food on the table. I'm about to have a baby. Like, what do you mean I should speak for a living?
Absolutely. And that was my perspective. I didn't know anything about it like that. Like, I'm like, man, I need to get a job. I got a wife and I got a daughter on the way. Like, I want to put some food on the table. Like, I grew up struggling. My whole family had to go through that. And so speaking at the time, I didn't know anything about it. I'm like, man, no, I'm good. Like, I need to get a job. And when the opportunities would come, like, I would go out and share, but I wasn't looking at it in terms of, man, I'm going to be a speaker one day. Like, I just wasn't viewing it that way.
So you go out, you're doing it here and there. You're just telling your story.
Right.
People are telling you you should speak. You pray on it. Does God answer your prayer in a way that for you it became clear that this should be my path? Yeah,
man, it did. I got an opportunity to go to Mississippi. I'll never forget it. Like, shortly after that prayer, like, and it was like a few days later, and it was like a 15-hour round trip driving. And I went and I spoke. And I'll never forget, I got the same feeling when I was backstage because now I'm tuned in, right? I prayed, now I'm paying attention. Now I'm looking for a sign. I'm like, I need something. You know what I'm saying? Because I ain't got nothing going, right? So I'm trying to see what's what. I'm looking for a sign. And I'm backstage, and I get the same feeling that I used to get in the tunnel before a game. And I go and I speak, and, you know, I get home probably like 2, 3 in the morning. And my wife is waiting up on me. And she's like, how did it go? I was like, it went good. She's like, what you get? I was like, they gave me this cool coffee mug. And she's like, you sure? Hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing? I'm like, yeah, I think so. And she was like, let's go for it. And I'm going to be honest with you, man. Like, at that point, Prez, it was just about being obedient, right? I wanted to be obedient because in the Bible it says obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yes.
But as people, the first thing we do is judge the level of sacrifice without being obedient. And so when I said, okay, Lord, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to rock. I'm going to do it. I just wanted to be obedient. And so it didn't matter what the opportunity was. It didn't matter what I was getting for the opportunity. I just wanted to be obedient to what I felt at that time God was calling me to do with my life.
At what point in this journey do you say to yourself, I actually have a gift for this? This is ordained. This is my accident. It was purposeful. As much as I wanted that NFL contract, now I'm starting to see there was something greater for me waiting on the other side, even though I couldn't see it in that moment, and I probably fought against it.
Absolutely.
when did you realize that you had a gift and this was your purpose?
When I started seeing people's response. That's why, like, even when you was like, man, like, you don't know what you did for my life. And I was like, man, thank you. And I said to you, nah, bro, this is confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's always been for me, because I never planned to do this. And so when I started seeing people coming up to me, whether it was somebody crying, whether it was a father saying, thank you for fighting, man, and handling your situation. I was about to leave my wife and 3 daughters, right? But because of what happened to you and how you fought, I'm staying in contact and I'm staying tapped in with my wife and my kids. I was like, man, this is a lot deeper than just me and an injury, right? Like, God is using this to be a blessing to other people and to impact people's lives.
I gotta believe there's a major struggle in the beginning. Major
Absolutely.
struggle. Was your wife always standing right by you?
Always, man. Always.
And the reason I ask you this is because there's a lot of people out there, and God has a purpose for them. And they might even know that. But
Absolutely.
there's somebody who they lay with every night, somebody who, by all accounts, I guess, love them, but they're telling them, do something else. You got to put food on the table. You got to do this. You got responsibilities, and you out there trying to chase this so-called dream of yours. What do you say to those people?
I would say go in prayer with them. Like with me and my wife, I knew right away once I started traveling, I was like, man, it's going to be a lot of sacrifice. I was like, man, I'm going to miss a lot of things, right? Like if I'm trying to get to a certain point to where I'm trying to make this a career, I'm trying to impact people, I'm trying to take care of my family financially, like we got to establish what it requires. And I prayed about it with my wife, you know, deep. We discussed, you know, and I made a lot of mistakes, right? I want to be sure to say that. I made a lot of mistakes, right?
Can
I
we
took
talk
a lot
about
of trips. Absolutely. I took a lot of trips when I probably shouldn't have, right? I went a lot of places when I probably shouldn't have went, and I probably should have stayed home, right? But because I'm in it and I'm looking at it in terms of, oh man, sacrifice is a part of the job, right? I need to do this to get here. I need to take this opportunity to get here. And my wife, just being a supportive wife, she's going to be like, okay, cool, right? And one time I took an opportunity, I think it was with the New York Knicks. And I'll never forget, it was on my wife's birthday. And the way it was set up, we and her talked about it. And,
this
you know,
don't
I was
sound good, Ink.
Oh, man.
I don't know where you about to go, but it don't sound good, brother.
It ain't, right? No, I'm telling you. So I was like, I'm going to send my wife and her grandmother to the spa, you know, that morning. I'm going to set up some things for them to do because it was set up to where I could get in early, speak, and then I could get back, you know, probably early afternoon, and we good. We had the rest of the day to roll. And we did, right? And we had a beautiful time that day. And we were discussing something, you know, a few days later, and she blew up, right? Just blew up. And I knew that was that, right? I knew. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear the silence of her saying, yeah, you can go, but don't go. Mm-hmm. I just heard, okay, she said I can go. I'm going to go. And then if I speak to the Knicks, and then this opened me up in the NBA and get me here, and I didn't catch it, right? And when she blew up, I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was that you left on my birthday, even though, you know, you got back, you still left because you were trying to build and get to a certain point in your career. And when I did that, I got it, you know, automatically I got it. And it was a lot of mistakes, like I said, on the front end, but luckily, man, it was a lot of prayer as well. And it was a lot of communication. And so we was able to sustain that and endure it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to take a step back because it's something I should have asked you a little while ago. How long did it take for your career to start picking up?
Man, I would say it took a few years. I would probably say to where it picked up like consistently the way I wanted.
Don't even go there. To where it picked up, where it started to at least provide income for you and your family, to where it
Gotcha.
wasn't just a dream anymore. This is real now. I can actually earn a living at this.
Yep. I would say about 2 years to where it got to a point to where I started earning income, but I would say to where it got to a point to where it was consistent and my pricing structure to get to where I wanted it to be. It was a little bit over 3 years to where I could start to build a life out of it. But I would say 2, I was spotting here and there, you know, on a pretty consistent basis. But 3, I was able to aim a little bit better and structure my life out a little bit better around it. Yeah.
And the reason I ask you this is because our audience is primarily people who are entrepreneurs. It's people who want to get ahead in life. And what I notice is people, they tap out too early. They lose that drive somewhere in there because the money is not coming in fast as they thought it would. So when I hear stories like yours, and I gotta believe the money is secondary. Yes, I know that you had to feed your family, but you are living a higher purpose. Like I told you earlier, you have really inspired my life. But for anybody out there who is trying, but they make a little money here, they might not see another check for another 60 days. What advice would you give to those people?
Absolutely. I would tell them, man, stay the course. Like I had one of my buddies, he started speaking, and, you know, a few months went by, I would say like 8 months, and he was ready to tap out. And I'm like, bro, you just been in it 8 months. Like they don't even know you yet, right? Which is cool. But I'm like, more importantly, you just been at it 8 months, right? Like lay the groundwork, lay the foundation, learn the business, establish relationships, go certain places and speak for free. Like get out there more, right? But what it does is when you put in the sacrifice, when you put in the time, when you put in the sweat equity, when you put in all these hours, what it does is on the back end, when the 2 and the 3 years go by, it makes it even sweeter. But I firmly believe in what you said. A lot of people tap out too early, right? A lot of people check out too early because they get to a certain point. I always say people don't burn out because of what they do. People burn out because life makes them forget why they do it.
Stop there.
Right?
Please say that again slow. I love that quote for you. Just rewind that back.
Yeah, man. Like people don't burn out because of what they do. People burn out because life makes them forget why they do it. And that's so important, man. Like I got into this business to impact people. I got into this industry to be true and authentic and impact people's lives. And I gotta constantly stay cognizant of why I got into this industry. Constantly stay cognizant of that because that's my number one priority and that's the most important. And I think along the lines of people forget that sometimes, right? When people start getting into entrepreneurship, they forget why they got started, right? And I think it's important to always revert back to that and use that as your driving force.
I love that quote. I think it's such a beautiful gem. And for anybody who's watching this on video or listening to this on podcast form, that is something that you should rewind and listen to that every morning, because if you can remember why you got into it to begin with, that will give you the motivation. That will give you that extra kick that you need day after day when you don't see no doors opening, when you don't see no momentum happening. Just remembering, why did I do this to begin with? Going back to that place, that love, that feeling that you had, that's the driver. I love that so much. Gotta ask you this, and I've heard you answer it before, but I want to answer you because my audience might not know your story in detail. Knowing what you know now, you mentioned several guys who you know and love who went to the pros. Your career was cut short. If you had the opportunity to do it all over again and God said, look, knowing what you know now, I'll take you back in time and I'll give you that NFL contract, what would you do?
I wouldn't take it. You know, and I wouldn't change a thing, man. You know, now, because you know how when you get on the other side of something Prez, and you start looking back at the journey, and you start looking back at the little pockets of the situation. You start looking back at the people that got affected and impacted, and you kind of start weighing the adversity and weighing what you wanted from the situation. Like if I can go at that play today, man, I'd go at it the exact same way and I wouldn't change it, you know, because of what happened in my life. It was pretty cool, right? It fortified my faith. I believe it made me a better person, right? I think now I'm a better father because of my injury. I'm a better husband, better son, better friend. But what it did in the people's lives that were connected to me is priceless, right? Like my friends, man, a lot of them came to know Christ. Like they gave their lives to Christ because of what happened to me.
Wow.
Like, you know, my father, you know, like his soul got saved. Like all this stuff, like my mother and father repaired their relationship. Like, man, these are things that you can't put a price on, right? And those are the reasons I wouldn't change it. One would think, oh, man, you wouldn't go back and be in the NFL and get that money and this, that, and the third. Like, bro, it ain't about that. Like, it's about what's real and what's true, right? It's about my friends and their households getting corrected, right? My father, his household getting corrected, right? Like, that's more important to me.
Is your dad, because you spoke about him often in this interview, is he a better grandfather than he was a father?
No doubt, man. It's awesome to see, you know.
Your children know him in a way that you didn't know him.
Oh, absolutely, man.
That's such a blessing.
It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that is such a blessing. Okay, before we close out, I think you have this amazing part of your story that I want to bring to the audience that just shows what persistence really is. Can you talk to me about the time you went out to meet Oprah?
Oh man, that was a beautiful moment, man. And that, you know, that moment kind of sparked me getting into speaking as well, because it was confirmation for me. Like I would get up every morning, Prez, and I would get dressed, you know, my wife would be getting dressed to go to work, and I would be going to look for a job, right? I would get dressed, go out the door, and people would tell me whatever they would tell me, whether it's overqualified, whatever. And I knew part of it was I got a paralyzed right on my hand, and it's cool, right? Like I'm built for it. I ain't gonna hold it against them. And so around that time, I had my book, and that was the only thing I had. And I get up one morning, and I tell my wife as she's getting dressed in the mirror, and I say, babe, I'm going to meet Oprah. Take Oprah my book. And my wife, you know, she was like, you know Oprah? And I was like, nah. She was like, okay. She's like, you know somebody at Harpo Studios? I was like, nah. And she was like, okay. She was like, you sure you want to do this? I was like, yes, ma'am. She was like, go for it.
Hold on, Ink. Hold on. We just ain't going to gloss over this.
Yeah.
You telling me you woke up and out the clear blue sky, because I know a lot of people who wrote books.
No doubt.
But I don't know one who said, I'm going to meet Oprah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Where did this even come from? Was this something that God just laid on your heart?
Yeah.
You just like, look, I'm going to just throw the fishing line out there and see what comes back?
Yeah, man, because, you know, part of it was it got put on my heart, but also, like I told you, when I got back to Atlanta, I was in such a place of confusion. I needed that confirmation that God was still walking with me. And so the second part of it was, okay, it's on my heart. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to go for it. And if I go for it and it happens, this is confirmation from God that, Ink, I still got you, right? Like I'm still walking with you. And so it was twofold. It was, okay, God placed it on my heart, but also it was, man, let me see if God's still walking with me, right? And so when it happened, and my wife, you know, me and my wife been at it since 5th grade. And so, you know, for her to see me like that, the average woman will probably be like, man, you tripping, because we didn't have no money like that. You know, like I probably had like almost $300 to my name in a 2X suit, you know? And so when I took off, it was real. It was an act of faith. Yeah.
Okay, so you go out to, is this back when Oprah still had her show?
Yeah, it's back when she was in Chicago, yeah. I drove.
Hold on, because I was about to ask you, did you fly?
Nah, I drove, man. I left Atlanta. I get to Chattanooga. I call my buddy Jeff. He was an attorney in Knoxville. He pick up. I said, Jeff, you're not gonna believe it. Jeff was like, what you got, Ink? I was like, man, I'm headed to meet Oprah to give her the book. Jeff was like, Ink, you know Oprah? And I was like, nah. He was like, okay, Ink, I know what this is. And he was an older gentleman. He's an attorney. He does well for himself. And he was like, I know you're extremely ambitious. He's like, Ink, but I want you to call me when you get to Knoxville because chances of this happening is a long shot. And I don't want you to be too disappointed when it doesn't happen. And I called him when I got to Knoxville, and he picked up. And he said, you still going, aren't you? I was like, yep. He said, stop by and pick me up, man. I'm going to ride with you so you don't be too disappointed. And we get there that night.
How long is that trip, by the way?
Oh, man, what was that trip? Atlanta to Chicago? What
that
is it?
Around the corner.
Nah, I can't even remember how many hours it was. I remember I left and when I got up that night. Got up there that night.
Wow.
And we checked into the hotel, and Jeff was like, Ink, you want me to get you a room? I was like, nah, I'll sleep on the cot in your room. And next morning we get up, and I go to the front desk, and I'm asking them little questions about directions and stuff like that. And Jeff is standing in the corner, and he's getting ready to work out. And when I go to walk out of the door, head to the studio, he's like, Ink, wait, I'm going to go with you. He's like, I'll get us a taxi. Like, I'm sure it won't be that long, right? And when we pull up, there's people everywhere. This is when her last shows were happening. Mm-hmm. And we get out of the car. I got on my suit. I got the book. Jeff was like, I'm going to go across the street. He's like, Ink, I'm sure I'll be seeing you in a minute. I'm going to go get me a cup of coffee. And I'm telling you, Prez, I would walk around the building, and every door that would open, I would try to rush in and be like, hey, I'm Inky Johnson. I came up from Atlanta with my book. And they was like, get out of here. We don't do that. And I was like, man, y'all rude. I'm like, bro, I thought y'all give away cars. Like, I got a book. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me just give him a book. And I'll never forget, man, I got so discouraged. I went around, it was like the back of the building. And I sat down and I was like, man, God, like, I thought it was you, man. Like, my wife gonna chew me out. And at this point, everybody has went into the building. And I get up and I'm walking around the side, and it looks to be like a homeless gentleman sitting on the curb. And I sit down beside him, and I said, man, how you doing? He was like, I'm great. He said, how are you? I said, man, I've seen better days, like the irony of the situation. And I get up, and I go to walk down the sidewalk, and coming toward me was Oprah and her security guard. And I'm like, here you shot. I'm like, surely when I go up, her security guard just going.
So you literally, hold up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you literally sitting down on the curb, stressed, feel like I just blew all my money, all this time, and you look up, and there she is.
There she is, with her security guard coming right down the same sidewalk I'm on.
And had you not walked to the back of the building, you would have missed her.
Probably would have. Had I not sat down too, my man probably had missed her. Yeah.
Tell me God ain't real. But go ahead.
Yeah, and I get up and I'm approaching her, but I'm thinking security gonna move me out of the way, but I gotta take my shot. And sure enough, they never stopped, and I'm walking. And as soon as I get like right in front of her, I was like, hey, I'm Inky Johnson. I drove up from Atlanta. I want to give you my book. And she grabbed it. She was like, oh, thank you. And I was like, can I take a picture with you? She was like, sure. And she started touching my suit. I always tell people she touched my suit. And she was like, this is a nice suit, right? And I always tell people, I think she was trying to see if I had something in my jacket, right? And I was like, thank you. And I take the picture. And she was like, all right, I got to get in and do my show. And my boy Jeff was running. And he was like, Ink, tell her to wait. I was like, nah, you didn't believe, right? And so I go to walk off. Prez, and her security guard says to me, he's like, hey, little man, wait real quick. Come here. And I go back up to him, and he says to me, I'm not telling you you're going to be on the show. He said, I'm not telling you you're going to be on a book club. I'm not saying any of that. He said, I just want you to know what just happened never happens. He said, usually she'll send me up, say, hey, get him out of the way, tell him to send it here, and she'll never get it. He said, I'm not telling you anything is going to come of it. I just want you to know the encounter you just had, it never happens. I said, thank you, man. I greatly appreciate it. And I sent the picture out. Friends, family, I put it on Facebook. Everybody responded, Ink, you gonna be on the show? You gonna be on the book club? I was like, man, I don't know. I was like, I really don't care. And you know, at that point, everybody's like, what you mean you don't care? I was like, that wasn't about that for me. It was like, what you mean it wasn't about that? I was like, that moment wasn't about that. And what it was God just showing me like, Ink, I got you. Like if I can take you from Kirkwood in Atlanta, you wake up one morning and you going to meet Oprah, and I can put you front and center, put your book in Oprah's hand, take a picture with Oprah. Like I got you, right? And from that point, it's like, God, let's go, man. Like it was confirmation that God was still walking with me. The same God that was walking with me from the time I was 7 years old in that 2-bedroom home with 14 people was the same God when I got injured at 20 years old, sent me back to Atlanta, and I was confused, feeling like, God, what am I doing back here? And so for me, it was just a moment of confirmation and clarity.
I'm so happy you told that story, because there is somebody out there right now. They are confused. They don't know. I got this brilliant idea. I don't know if I'm going in the right direction. What I would say, because you just dropped so many gems, and I want to highlight a couple of them. Mm-hmm. Number one, try it. Try God. Like he will not leave your side. If I always say this quote that I got from Jack Canfield, the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul series.
No doubt.
He will not give you a dream if you don't have the capacity to fulfill it. Meaning,
absolutely,
when he gives you a dream, it is your dream. It is not Shawn's. It is not Inky's. It is yours. And he wouldn't give it to you if you don't have the capacity to fulfill it. But if you try him and you put him to the test, I promise you, he will show up every single time. So that's number one. And number two is, I come from the music industry. Mm-hmm. And I have walked alongside Shawn Diddy Combs more than a few times. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, because in his case, people come up and they're handing him CDs at that time. Trust me when I tell you, getting that close to an icon, a legend, a celebrity of Oprah status, it doesn't happen. So what that security guy ran to the side and told you, trust me when I tell you, if there was ever a sign from God letting you know, keep going, I'm with you, that was it, because it just doesn't happen. Usually it's somebody else. They take your little CD, take your book or whatever, and it never gets to the right hands. So that's such a great story. So wherever you are in your journey, if you're watching this, please allow this to be your validation. Allow this to be the thing that you've been searching for. Go out there, chase your dreams, do what it is that you know in your heart that you're supposed to do. Because I believe with every fiber of my being, God will not leave your side.
That's real.
Ink, I could go on all day long. This is such a pleasure for me. You dropped so many gems. Where can my audience find you at?
Mm-hmm. Man, first off, man, I just want to thank you, man, just for the opportunity. I want to thank you for what you do, and most importantly, how you do it. You know, man, like I don't do a lot of interviews, man. And, of course, I looked at your stuff. I was like, man, this is beautiful. Like, I got to do it, right? And so I want to thank you just for the opportunity. But I'm just Inky Johnson, man, on all social media handles. INKYJOHNSON, Inky Johnson Motivate on Instagram, because my first Instagram got hacked. And so I couldn't just get Inky Johnson. They hacked me and stole my name. So I got Inky Johnson Motivate. But website, inkyjohnson.com, man. And I would greatly appreciate the support.
Please, if you're watching it or you're listening to it in podcast form, please go and follow him, subscribe to his YouTube channel. And if he is in your town, please, I can tell you, this is somebody, no matter if you got $1 left in your pocket, spend it. He's the truth. He has a God-given gift. Ink, thank you so much. And you are a true power move maker. God bless you.
God bless you, my brother.
What's up, guys? Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video. truly appreciate you. If you like anything you heard here today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you know anybody that can benefit from this message, feel free to share. Peace and love.